I represent a consulting firm. So we now have managers from large organizations coming to us, asking us to help them with their DevOps transformation. And the question now becomes, when the managers want to do a DevOps transformation in a large organization, how do they get engineers on board? Hello, Labadena. So how are you doing? Well, it's been a killer conference up until now. Like, we've heard about Agile going dead, and then Enterprise IT died. So we've been killing off a lot of things today. But in general, a great organization. A lot of thanks to the organizers and to all the other speakers, and to you, of course, for coming. Now, do you know who this beautiful boy in the picture is? Well, some of you may have heard of him. This is Aaron Swartz. Aaron was a kid computer prodigy. At the age of 13, he took active part in defining and developing the RSS protocol. At the age of 16, he worked with Lawrence Lessig, helping him shape his Creative Commons license definition. And at the age of 19, he co-founded Reddit, one of the most influential social networking news websites. As a developer, Aaron was responsible for developing the web.py framework and one of the major contributors to the Markdown framework, which many of us, anyone who uses GitHub, uses for documenting what our code does. Now, as Aaron grew older, he became increasingly more interested in political activism, fighting with the existing copyright laws and political corruption. Aaron sincerely believed that we need to free the information, to make the information freely available for distribution, copying, publishing, and consumption in order to make this world a better place. In year 2010, Aaron was invited to become a research fellow at the Harvard University at the lab for the research of institutional corruption. And it was there that he came across JSTOR, which is a commercial digital library providing back issues of academic journals for a subscription fee. Now, Harvard is MIT, and Aaron got a guest account from the MIT to the JSTOR library. And in true spirit of MIT hacktivism, what he did is he took a laptop and installed it in a closet somewhere in the MIT, connected it to the MIT network, and wrote an automation script, of course, that would download documents from the JSTOR library and publish them to the wide open internet. The activity, after some time, got detected. Aaron got arrested, and the prosecution threatened him with $1 million in penalty and 35 years in prison. After 18 months of negotiation, Aaron just quite unexpectedly hung himself and took his own life at the age of 28. It's a sad and shocking story. Aaron was probably too young and naive and sensitive for this cruel world. But I think the values that he stood for are ever more relevant today and are directly related to the topic of my talk. But let's get acquainted. So I'm Anton Weiss. I'm a self-proclaimed DevOps evangelist and enabler. So if you're thinking, for schmuck's sake, what that is, we'll leave the enablement for later. But evangelists are those folks that tell you why a certain idea or technology, like Jesus Christ or Linux, or freedom of information for that matter, is better than what you currently use. Okay, and then they try to convert you. So in its essence, an evangelist's job is to create change. And change is what we're going to be talking about today. Now, I love change. Do you love change? Raise your hand if you love change. Yeah, we love change. Change is good, right? Now, I think we're all lying. As Dr. House said, everybody lies. We lie to ourselves because if we look deep into our heart, we realize we don't really like changing things that much. Well, maybe, you know, once in a while when they're nice changes, like driving in a new car, that feels quite good. Or the first week at a new job, the office is beautiful and you get a new computer with a greeting card next to it, and the receptionist smiles to you, and your colleagues are also smiling because you haven't crossed anyone's path yet, and you haven't ruined anyone's code yet. But you know this won't last, right? Because then the stress kicks in, because change is stressful, because it's a trip into unknown, and unknown scares the shit out of us. Now, if you still believe that change is not that scary, then you're probably just a psycho. Or more precisely, you're a neophil or a neophiliac. This was a term coined by Robert Anton Wilson, a cult mystic writer, which means that you're obsessed with novelty. You want change so much that you don't fear its consequences. And that is not normal. Multiple surveys have shown that we, computer geeks, are much more inclined to neophilia than your average Joe. And actually, I'm a bit like that myself, which led me at a certain point to quit my 9-to-5 career and switch to consulting. But I do realize I'm crazy. Now I have another question. Do you like it? Do you like to be told what to do? Raise your hand if you like to be told what to do. Or specifically, if you like when other people tell you how to do your job. Yeah, right. Nobody likes when they tell you how to do things or what to do. As Rage Against the Machine said, screw you, I won't do what you tell me. So here I want to introduce another dimension. Voluntary versus forced. So even when we do like voluntary change once in a while, even the most neophilic freaks among us don't like when change is forced upon them, right? Because when it's a voluntary change, our mind has already weighed the pros and the cons, and we decided to go for it. And when somebody else comes and forces the change upon us, we realize they did the evaluation, and we realize they don't have a clue, right? Who are they to know what's good? So why am I talking about all this? What am I trying to evangelize here? Well, you see, we're at a DevOps conference here, right? And DevOps was born as a grassroots movement. And like any people's movement, like any revolution, it was a fire that flared up from a brushwood pile of despair over inefficiencies of the old ways of working, and a spark of creativity. The spark of creativity that led the brighter minds among us, such as Patrick Dubois and Andrew Clay Sheffer, to realize that there's probably a better way. Now, some say that DevOps is a continuation of Agile, right? There are many talks about that, how DevOps is an extension of Agile because Agile wasn't taking operations into account. That's why DevOps was needed. And if we think about it, Agile in itself was a revolution. Like, it had a manifesto with all the noble ideas of humanity, communication, collaboration written on its flags. But with time, as happens with most good and successful ideas, ideologies, religions, Agile has become institutionalized. And you know what institutionalization does to good ideas? Screws them up. Like, Christianity had some very good ideas, right? But institutionalized Christianity, what it gave us? Crusades, Inquisition, barbecued Giordano Bruno. And communism had some very good ideas, but institutionalized communism gave us Gulag, Cuba, and North Korea. And in the same way, Agile had some good ideas, but institutionalized Agile gives us all of this, and stand-up meetings, pre-planning meetings, planning meetings, post-planning meetings, and the ever mysterious story points. Come talk to me afterwards if you know what story points are all about. I still can't figure this out. So, you know, when we started having these meetups and conferences back in Israel about 5 years ago, there were folks, engineers, coming up on stage and saying, how do we get managers to understand that this DevOps thing is good for the business? How do we sell DevOps to managers? Now, fast forward to here and now, and suddenly we as consultants have managers who have heard about DevOps because DevOps is all the buzz now, right? And everybody wants DevOps because everybody realizes this is the efficient way of delivering software quickly. So we now have business, we now have managers coming to us and saying, we want DevOps transformation, but how do we get engineers on board now? Okay, so the situation is upside down. And on board, like we're building a ship here. Now, who here can say that his organization is fully DevOps today? Not much. Half DevOps? Only starting? Spraying some DevOps powder? Okay, so I have to tell you that if you're only starting, your chance of success is less than 30%. This has been a widely known statistics for any change initiative success in the industry for the last 100 years at least. Okay, and DevOps is organization-wise change. It requires us to change the culture, to change the technology, to change the processes, to change the organizational structure in the end. So I'd say that our chance of success with DevOps is even lower. Okay, and the main cause for such a high failure rate in organizational changes is that employees resist change. You know, there's this very well-known picture of a change curve that shows that any change in an organization first has a very negative impact, and not too many organizations succeed in going through this downward curve. Now, we have to remember, just a second. We have to remember that when we're talking about IT organizations, we're not talking about regular employees, we're talking about engineers. And engineers, as my colleague and true DevOps thought leader Avishai Shalom says, where there are two kinds of engineers: bitter, cynical, paranoid engineers and junior engineers. Okay. Now, when I was still an employee, when I was trying to change organization from within, from the trenches, I would always say that you need to introduce process and tool changes the way you sell drugs. Okay, you need to provide the first sample free. So you look for some low-hanging fruit, something small, but in the critical path, and then you automate it, but it has to be something that provides real value, something that makes the engineers or the managers work really better and faster. And then, when they're hooked, when they can't live without this little feature anymore, then you build it into your long-term plan. But now, suddenly, when I was coming as a consultant, I started to look at the change from a different angle. Because here was I thought we were coming here to help these folks to find a way to work better, faster, smarter, with less bottlenecks, with less friction, more quality. What's here not to want? Like, their managers are sponsoring this change, for Christ's sake. And I was really feeling like we were those soldiers of freedom coming to let the prisoners out of their cages. Come out, you're free now. But, well, I wasn't that naive. Like, I spent my share of time at large corporate organizations with heavyweight cultures. And still, the reaction was discouraging because I saw people who weren't happy with the way they worked and still were very reluctant to do the change. Like, some of them said, yeah, those efficiency initiatives, we've seen this before. These management bums, they only want to do change because that's what they're measured for. And in the end, it will be all the same crap, just more headache for the engineers. We've seen this with Agile, and I couldn't argue here. They did. Okay, and then others would just start complaining that they don't have enough resources right away. And still others were just, hiding information, saying, we're in control, everything's going fine. Now, who were they trying to fool? I'm not a junior engineer. So I do realize that everything cannot be fine and in control in a politicized software company with tons of legacy code. Now, we see that engineers, even though they're very creative and innovative and curious by their nature, can be also very skeptical and paranoid when the change initiatives come from the upstairs. And all our talks about organizational efficiency and gazillions deploys a day and peace and love between developers and operators don't really impress engineers. And you know what the thing that impresses engineers is? What sometimes can even surprise them is when they're listened to. This is something engineers don't expect of business because it doesn't happen too much. Okay, so if you want to surprise an engineers, listen to them. Yeah, Adrian Cockcroft, the guy who famously took Netflix from on their journey to the cloud and to microservices, has this great post which says free communication disrupts hierarchies. And he's right, because only by enabling the free flow of information can we actually reach the level of autonomy and the fast rate of change that we expect DevOps to bring upon. And yeah, one more thing, the thing that I always say about continuous delivery pipelines is that it's important to remember that they pump information. A pipeline that only builds and deploys your code isn't worth much, but a pipeline that also produces useful and actionable information in process, this is something that can really change the way you work. And I even say that we shouldn't be talking about them as pipelines anymore, because pipelines, they're hidden inside the walls, in the ground. Nobody wants to know what's flowing in there. And if it suddenly flows out, we prefer not to touch. We call the plumber, right? So I think we should be talking about CI/CD streams, like sources of nutrition and energy, like streams where we fish and swim and drink water from. So, you know, at one organization that we were consulting, their managers were closing the doors when they were talking about DevOps, because they were scared that the other department will steal their DevOps ideas and do DevOps first. And they like had these really religious wars saying, our DevOps is better, they're doing DevOps wrong. So what I see, this really brings me back to what Aaron Swartz was saying. Only by providing a free flow of information, free communication inside the organization can you really start changing things. And this is a culture thing, of course, even though culture has become a swear word at those conferences. Like everybody's talking culture, 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 like we just invented culture. And still, this is a culture change. We need to enable a culture of safety and trust and fault tolerance. And of course, this has to come from leadership. And we need to make all information visible. I really saw organizations making huge shifts in the way they work in collaboration and efficiency by just introducing and adopting Confluence or another kind of organizational wiki. And it's not only about internal information flows, it's also about letting the information flow outside. If you look at the best and the most successful organizations today, software organizations, you'll be amazed at how much information they output to the community. They blog, they talk at conferences, they open source their stuff, okay? And they talk not only about their successes, they also talk about their failures, okay? Because as Aaron correctly understood in his young age, only by sharing knowledge can we really get better ourselves and build better things and make this a better world. In one of Stephen Covey's books, he talks about a top manager who, when Stephen asked him if half a year would suffice for the manager and his team to develop their new corporate values, the manager said, who needs half a year? We'll just, you know, work on it over the weekend. But the truth is, you can't really do any substantial change over the weekend. It takes time, it takes patience. It's not that simple. It takes experimentation. So that's what I want to leave you with. Free up the information, never cease learning, and have patience. And good luck on your journey. Thank you.
We have some time for questions, so please be free to ask.
Hi, you mentioned about listening to engineers, but do they actually talk to someone? I have some of my colleagues that seems that they don't speak to anyone. So how to take that info from them? How to set information free if they are unwilling to speak, as agents would say?
Well, we see, like, we as consultants, if we're invited to do a DevOps transformation, we always start with assessing the current situation. So we start with, you know, shadowing engineers' work, engineers, operators, testers, project managers, you know, anyone who does something productive. And we also do interviews, and you'll be amazed at how much people want to tell you when you start asking questions. The thing is, nobody's really asking questions. Like, you ask engineers about code, but you never ask them about changing the process. And you know, they're usually just grumpy about it because, yeah, they mostly care about the code. But if you ask them, they'll start talking. That's what we've seen. Maybe sometimes you need like an outside interference, somebody who comes from the outside, and then they'll be more readily open for sharing their despair. So yeah, actually, as a consultant, I really, again, there are cases of hiding information, exactly as I said. There are those folks who say, yeah, it's all okay, but then when you start digging further, you understand it's not okay. Sometimes it brings you to situations of conflict, something we shouldn't be scared of. Yeah, this won't be easy, maybe painful.
Go ahead.
Hi. A question. You're working together with managers in those companies, right? And maybe
Yep.
change agents in the companies. How difficult is it to convince them? Are they maybe not sometimes asking you for something? Oh, can I have not something simpler, a blueprint, and not something which is as open, as vague, and they don't know what will happen, right?
Yeah, we've seen this situation also. Like, there are managers, and they say we want DevOps, and then we come and we conduct the interviews, and we bring up all the shit, okay, and then the manager said, who wants to know about this? Just tell me the process, just build the DevOps and go. Okay, and like, also those situations where you start talking to managers and you tell them, okay, to have DevOps you have to change this, this, and this, and they say, change? Who's talking about change? Just bring some tools and do your job. Okay, so yeah, that happens. Okay, that's what I'm talking about here. You can't really bring on change if you expect tools to fix the thing that you have here. You need to start listening. The engineers are the real source of change. Okay, we can't really tell anyone how to do their job. It never works, and it never worked in any of the organizations I worked with. You can't tell people how to do their job. You need to ask them what's the best way to do the job they're doing, because they're the specialists, they're the experts.
Yeah, hi. Quick question. Do you have any examples in your practice where companies failed to introduce DevOps culture and basically reverted it back at some point?
Well, we haven't been doing consulting for long enough to say that those were total failures. What we did see is people leaving because they were told what to do. And then there were managers leaving, there were engineers leaving, and then they hired new managers and new engineers and started anew. Okay, so they weren't like total failures causing the business to close or something like that, or saying, no, we don't do this anymore, we go back to the waterfall and deploying once a quarter. Okay, nobody did that in the end, but we saw a lot of stumbling and a lot of conflict and a lot of, you know, people leaving organizations, things like that.
Thank you.
But nobody gives up on this, because everybody does understand that things have to change. It's just how do we bring on this change in an effective way? That's what concerns me. Okay. Thank you very much. You're a great crowd.